Hello, it's Pedro Pena. Just kidding. It's David Hooper from Big Podcast. But you're in the right place. This is my stuttering life. Let's get started.
What's up, guys? This is Pedro from My Stuttering Life, where you will hear the good, the bad, the very ugly. We're going to laugh, we're going to cry, but through it all, just know that you are not alone. So, let's get started. This is episode number 57, and my special guest is Cynthia Zmroczek. Miss Zmroczek received her Master's of Science degree from West Virginia University and has been a speech language pathologist with the Department of Defense for the past 11 and a half years, providing comprehensive services to active duty service members, retirees, and their families who have been injured as a result of a traumatic brain injury. Her primary area of expertise is working with people who have difficulty with memory, attention, auditory processing, organization, and time management. Her interests include hiking, travel, seeing and supporting the arts, spending time with friends and family, and ballroom dancing. I am honored to have her as a guest with me on the My Stuttering Life podcast. Welcome, Cynthia Zmroczek.
Thank you for having me today, Pedro.
Thank you so much. Did I get your last name correct? Because I've been practicing all morning.
You did. You did a really great job.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we have a lot of topics to cover, so let's get started. During the intro, I briefly talked about how you work with the Department of Defense and help our veterans, retirees, and families with speech therapy for those veterans who have a traumatic brain injury. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. The majority of people that come to our clinic have had, well, all of them have had some sort of head trauma or qualifying event. And most of them come to the clinic seeking to get back to their normal selves, whatever that might be. And so it's our job as a team to figure out how we can help them, fully recover as much as possible. From my end of things, I know speech therapy, you think fluency, and a lot of people think learning to talk again when it comes to brain injury. But really in my realm, it's more like cognitive therapy. So we're working on memory, attention, problem solving, executive function skills, which are time management, organization, things like that. And so we do evaluations and then we provide treatment to try to help the person improve their memory and attention or whatever it is they're working on.
That is awesome. Let me tell you, first of all, I want to thank you for serving our veterans. Don't know if you know this, but I am a Persian Gulf War veteran. I served in 1990. And even before I joined the U.S. Air Force, I had to take let me see, how should I word this? A special test, because when I arrived at the MEPS station, and that is the Military Entrance Processing Center, when they had asked my name, they noticed that I had a stutter. Now, mind you, I went through all of the physical tests. I did all of the mother requirements. However, when they heard me speak, they had pulled me. Pulled me out of line, and they put me in this office. And so this captain comes in and tells me, that if I could recite these commands, giving orders, then I would be okay. So he hands me this list of commands, and to a person who stutters, this may have been a book because I was, first of all, I called on the Lord. I said, okay, I cannot go back home to Corpus Christi. I took the ASVAB. I scored very well. I am at the MEPS for the U.S. Air Force. I'm going to do this. And so each command, I just gave it my all. And so I read all of his commands that he gave me. And he said, okay, great, you're in. And so after, that point, I was just so relieved. And joining the U.S. Air Force, it has been the best thing in my entire life because I've met so many wonderful people, and I traveled the world. And so I'm very grateful to the military. And so I just wanted to, tell you again, thank you for helping the veterans and their families and retirees in all that you do as a speech language pathologist.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you for your service as well.
Thank you. Now, when you work with the families of the veterans, what types of services do you provide for the families?
Well, similarly to the veterans, the people that their family members also have had some sort of head injury, the people that we see. So most of the services are generally the same. They just aren't job specific to the military. So I might have a student, like a teenager that comes in with a head injury, and we'll do study skills, time management, things that pertain to, their occupation in life, if you will. Or for their spouses, it might be, how to manage things at their work or at home, remembering things to get at the store, whatever their memory or problem solving or whatever issue might be. But it's generally the same type of thing, but applied to that person specifically.
How cool. Now, in your background as a speech language pathologist, had you ever worked in the schools and worked with school teachers and parents of their children who stuttered?
I have not worked in the school setting outside of my clinical externship, but I don't know if you're aware of this, but some of the patients I saw at the Intrepid Spirit Center, they have developed a stutter post-traumatic stress. So I've worked with them in that capacity, developing, using the same techniques that you might use to help with decreasing your stutter.
Wow, that is great. Now, speaking in general terms, what advice do you have for parents and teachers with regards to children who stutter?
I would say overall, what I've learned at the clinic I'm in now, I try to approach, since it's brain injury rehab, I try to approach things from a whole person perspective. So I think the number one thing is taking care of yourself. And that starts with the basics, maybe things you might not even think about, like sleep, nutrition, exercise, resiliency, and I noticed you did some breathing at the beginning of the show. And that's one thing I would recommend, is doing some deep breathing on a daily basis to try to train your brain to stay in that relaxed mode instead of that constant stress mode that we're used to putting on ourselves. So I would say that would be my number one thing, is taking care of yourself and breathe.
Yes, breathing for me has been extremely beneficial. And I had just learned that when I was in the U.S. Air Force. I met with a hypnotherapist, and we did hypnosis, and we practiced breathing exercises, and what he had told me was that when most people breathe, they breathe through their chest area, which is shallow breathing. They don't breathe from their diaphragm. And so when he taught me how to breathe from my diaphragm, he told me to take a deep breath. So as I exhale, I'm going to speak, and there are no blocks because the speech is very fluent as I am exhaling the air.
Mm-hmm.
However, I sound like a robot, so I had to work on that to lose that robotic voice. But there are many, many people who stutter that I have spoken to who use this technique, and they find it very beneficial.
I agree. I think that you could use the breathing technique while you're speaking. But the way that I use the breathing technique is more meditative in a way, where you would spend 10 to 20 minutes a day just working on diaphragmatic breathing. And that's what you were talking about, the belly breathing. So by doing that, it actually has a brain implication. So the diaphragm is attached to the amygdala in your brain through the vagal nerve. And when you breathe consecutively for a while, not just before, just after periods of stress, but just on a day-to-day basis, this can help tell your brain that it's relaxed. It's connected to the fight or flight part of your brain. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And you make a great point, because I am learning meditation right now. I started in November. And so every day I spend 10 minutes in a quiet room, and I just focus on my breathing. And so I also do positive affirmations,
Mm-hmm.
which for me, they help out tremendously, because I'm telling myself I'm going to have a good day. And if I have a block, oh well, life goes on. And if I need help, I'm going to ask for help. But I'm not going to dwell on it, because previously when I would dwell on it, that's when the anger comes up. I'm frustrated, I'm agitated, I'm irritated. And that's when things go south. And by learning to meditate, I have found that it has had a positive impact on me and my speech, because every day I just sit for 10 minutes. I turn everything off. Everything goes off. And so I'm just focusing on my breathing for 10 minutes while I am doing my positive affirmations. And then also Post-it notes. I love Post-it notes. Let me tell you, Cynthia, because on the Post-it notes, I write down my positive affirmations. And so I have them on my bathroom mirror. So every time I walk in, I am seeing the positive affirmations. And each day when I'm meditating, I am just going over them over and over and over again. And I mean, it just has been awesome for me.
I totally agree with the positive affirmations. And there's two things that I'm thinking about right here. One is there are different ways to meditate. So if you're not a person that can sit for 10 minutes, there's other things you can do. And the other thing I'm thinking about is my point number 2 that I was going to make today, is that it does matter what you say to yourself. So you hit the nail on the head. Whether you do positive affirmations or you are telling yourself, I know I'm going to stutter when I say this word, I don't want to say it, try to let all that go and think positive, and, try to be okay if it comes out differently than you had planned. I think so just to expound on the different ways to meditate, I just want to say that I like to teach guided meditation as one way because sometimes people have trouble quieting their brain to long enough to sit without things for 10 minutes. So guided meditation can be really helpful. There's also yoga or Tai Chi, which are great ways to incorporate the breathing and also be grounded at the same time.
That is great information because I'm I'm starting yoga. Well, okay, let me backtrack. I bought a yoga mat. So that's baby steps, right? Baby steps. And so I bought a camo yoga mat. And so, that's my first step. And so I am planning to follow through and join a beginner's yoga because here in my local area we don't have any. However, in Houston, they're all over the place, and so I plan on finding a beginner's yoga and be getting that because it can only help.
Mm-hmm. You had asked me about what parents or students can do in schools, and I think that's one of the things I've noticed recently. There are a few schools or classes at least that are teaching kids to implement relaxation tools, but not a lot of them. And I think every child could actually benefit from learning those early on rather than waiting till adulthood to kind of happen upon something that works for them.
You are 100% correct because when I went to school, okay, because I'm much older than you are, Cynthia. So when I went to school in the 1970s, speech therapy, it was, well, okay, first of all, the, teachers during history class or English, we would have to read out loud. And so one day, my English teacher had this book, and so we each had to read a paragraph. And so I was number 4 down the line of desks. And so as the first kid was reading, physically, my heart was beating so hard. And then as the next kid read the next paragraph, my hands were sweating. And then the next kid, when he read his paragraph, I kid you not, I could not move. I could not move any part of my body. And then when it was my turn, the teacher looked at me and told me to read the paragraph. And so, we had to stand up. And that paragraph, to me, it looked like a 500-page book. And the first word, I knew I could not say the first word. So I had a stutter like you would not believe. And there were kids in there pointing and laughing, Porky Pig. That was their only frame of reference at that time. Mm-hmm. And so I could not do it. And so I just sat down. And then the teacher had the student behind me read my paragraph. And that made me feel like the lowest of the low. And so then I told myself that will never, never, ever happen again. And so the following week, when the teacher was calling us out to read, when it came up to me, I would raise my hand and go to the restroom. And so for years I did that for every class, history and English and whatever. When it was my turn to read, I would go to the restroom. And the teachers thought that I had a medical condition, but I said no because I was not able to read out loud. Now, had the school speech therapist, it would have been helpful for me to have had the conversation with the teacher and the speech therapist. That way we had an understanding of what I have and what I can do and what I can do. However, at that time, there was just none of that collaboration. And so, nowadays I am so happy to hear about how teachers and speech therapists and parents are working hand in hand to help out the student. However, I wish I had that meditation therapy when I was in school, because that would have helped me not go through such hard times.
Well, I can't totally empathize with you, but I can somewhat, because I will say that I was painfully shy when I was a kid. And those reading things I had the same reaction. I tried to avoid them as much as possible.
Oh, yeah, it is traumatic. Oh, my gosh, it is so traumatic. So, with your population, what is the most effective speech therapy technique that you have found that works well?
I would say, I mean, it's person specific, like depending on what that person needs at the time.
Right.
I will say that a lot of people that they would come in reluctantly kind of to address their stuttering. And when I say a lot of people, I mean the handful of people that I've seen for this over the past 11 years, maybe 8 or 10, maybe. Most of them didn't even want to address their stutter. They were frustrated. They just they would go through the eval and then they were done. But there were a few people that stuck it out and would try to use the techniques. And, the thing that I found, I really liked your piece on disclosure, because I would encourage them to give the person they were speaking to a heads up about what they wanted to talk about, and the fact that they had a stutter, so that they could kind of know where they were coming from before the conversation even started. I think that was really helpful. And that's something that I would encourage people to do, which, sometimes people didn't want to do it right off the bat, but then after they did some speech therapy and they, I think, felt a little more comfortable with themselves, then they were able to kind of put that out there.
You are so right, because before, when I did not disclose my stutter, when I speak and when I have a block, my eyes close, my hands are all over the place. I'm moving, I'm tapping my leg, I have some facial tics. And for some people, they're not really prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I have learned is, when I disclose, and I tell everybody now. I mean, I tell the person at Whataburger, I tell the person at McDonald's, at the department store, and at the post office. I disclose to everybody, because for me at this point in my life, it's all about education.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know what a stutter is, and when I'm speaking to you, you may see some facial tics. You may notice I'm tapping my leg, or my hands and arms are all over the place, and that my eyes are closed. That's how I handle a block and try to get the block out. And when they know that, they are more patient, they are more supportive, and that, for me, has been extremely beneficial, because before, when I would talk to people, they would just either look at their watch, or they would find an excuse and leave the conversation while I'm having a block. So, that was kind of rough. But, nowadays, I just tell everybody, I disclose to everyone. That way, everyone knows what is going on when Pedro is talking. So I 100% agree. It's important to disclose your stutter. Now, let me ask you a question. With all of this new technology, you have Alexa, you have Google Home, and then you have the one that begins with an S that I always have a hard time with, but it's with Apple. Do you think that all of this new technology, is it helpful, or is it a hindrance to people who stutter?
Well, I would think, I guess I keep saying this, but it depends on the person. I think it could be helpful because it's not an actual person doing the listening. And I know sometimes that can be a little bit easier to communicate your thoughts when it's not a person. So in school, and I've heard people say that it's sometimes easier to talk to their pets. So I guess if you think about Alexa and Siri and Google as your pet or a non-person, it might make it a little bit easier. What are your thoughts on technology?
Well, let me tell you, Cynthia, my SUV has all this voice activated stuff. And so when I first bought it, I said, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So here I am. I am in the dealership parking lot. I've been there for over 30 minutes trying to voice activate anything.
Oh,
And I'm trying and I'm breathing. I said, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And it just wasn't successful. I was sweating like you have no idea. And the people at the dealership, they were wondering, what was I doing in there? Talking to myself and, hitting my head and, looking all aggravated. And so finally, I just pushed the button and so I started the vehicle and drove off. And so for a lot of people, because we're all different, we all have our different journeys with our stutter. And for me, it's like 50-50. There are days when, I may have a bad speech day. So I'll just hop on an app and I will order dinner and, it will be prepaid. And then when it comes to my front door, I don't have to say anything. I just smile and take the food. So, for me, it's helpful. And for many people that I have spoken to who stutter, you had made a great point as to where it helps them to practice because it isn't a human being. It's a robot. They have found it useful to practice their stutter. So very interesting, I think.
absolutely. I think that is a great way to practice fluent speech. I hadn't thought about that one.
Now, what is your number one tip for people who stutter?
Well, I would say taking care of yourself and breathing. When I mean take care of yourself, as I mentioned earlier, getting enough sleep, eating right, exercising, having a tool for resiliency. I think all of those things can decrease the overall level of, I'll just call them stressors on your body, on your system. And I think by at least having all those things will help you be more fluent in general. Not to say that physiological system is, we don't know what it's going to do from second to second, but having all of the things lined up where they are at the best place you can be with them, I think is going to be helpful.
That is a great tip because I do one of those things. I should do all of them, Cynthia, but I only do one. And that's, I know, horrible. Okay. But what has helped me also is reading out loud. I will get a book, find a chapter, and just read out loud. And so what I have found is that has also helped me out tremendously. And then also practicing in front of my bathroom mirror. I can't tell you how many hours and days and months and years that I have practiced speaking in front of the mirror. That way I can look at all of my facial tics. My eyes are going all over the place, but I am rehearsing. I'm practicing my name. I also practice good morning. That way, for me, once again, we are all different in our stuttering journey. But for me, speaking in front of a mirror, practicing daily phrases, that has also helped me out tremendously. But I will work on getting more sleep, and I will work on nutrition because here in Texas, we love our chicken fried steak, our mashed potatoes, our corn on the cob. I mean, we really love that. So I will have to work on that as well. But I would like to say thank you for spending time with me today. And then I can never say this enough. Thank you for helping our veterans, our heroes. Being a veteran myself, I can't tell you how awesome it is to hear about individuals helping our nation's heroes. So, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, I have a large listener audience. They are global. Let me tell you, they're in Australia and England and Germany and Canada. Now, let's say they wanted to reach out to you. How would they do that?
Well, they could reach out to me on my website. I have my own business. It's memoryconsultationservices@gmail.com. You can also look at my website and contact me there. I'd love to hear from anybody if I can be helpful. And I do really appreciate you thanking me, but it was my pleasure working with the military service members. They're a great group of people, and I just love what I do. So thank you.
That is awesome. Now, down the road, because I know this will not be our last conversation, because I think you are #awesome. And so, down the road, you always have an open invitation to hop on and then talk about whatever you are working on with our military.
Great. Thank you. I have some ideas too. I have some people I want to connect you with. So
That would be so awesome. You have no idea. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you have an awesome day, and we will talk again.
thank you.
If you like this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening, and we will talk again.